Welcome back to Temple Emmanuel. We trust that you are enjoying the beginning of summer with the hot days and the thunderstorms that we've been having lately. This Shabbat we read the Torah portion Balak. This Torah portion is very famous for the story of Bilam, a sorcerer for hire who is contracted by the king Balak and sent out to curse the people of Israel who are encamped east of the Jordan just as they are about to enter the promised land. And of course, on his way to cursing the people, God influences his Jenny. An aton is a Jenny. For those of you who are short on barnyard wisdom, a Jenny is the female version of a jackass. And God influences the animal who prevents Bilam from moving forward and eventually speaks to him. And then, of course, when Bilam tries to curse the Hebrews, he is only able to bless them, since he is a true prophet, and a real prophet can only say what God wants him or her to say. The very relevant part of this Torah portion for our lives today, however, is the genesis of this scene of the talking Jenny. And the genesis of it is Balak, this king, whose name is given to the Torah portion, who is really afraid of the Hebrews coming and moving into the neighborhood. There's a boundary question in this week's Torah portion, a border question, if you will. We have the primary actors is the kings of Midian and the kings of Moab. And that's interesting, because the Midianites have an interesting relationship with the Hebrews. In fact, Moses' wife is a Midianite. And it is from Yitro, Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, that we get advice on the beginning of the organization of ourselves as a nation back in the book of Exodus. And of course, Moab, which is today identifiable as the middle section of the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan, is the place where Ruth comes from, the great-great-grandmother of King David, and in our tradition, the progenitor of the Messiah himself. And so these are two nations with which we've had good relations for many, many years, lots of interaction, some negative, mostly positive. And here, these two nations, these two other peoples, Moab and Midian, band together to try to prevent the Hebrews from not only crossing their border and entering the land, but they join together to try to even prevent them from approaching the border altogether. They call out extraordinary means. They curses and blames and banishments and all kinds of stuff goes on in this irrational attempt to keep the Hebrews from passing through from the ultimate end of their escape from slavery 40 years after their wanderings and settling peaceably in their land. Of course, we know that at the end of the day, God wants these wandering Hebrews to find the border that they cross to make themselves at home in their own country or adopted country, however you want to look at it, and become safe, productive people and a safe, productive, peaceful, and productive nation in their own land. It raises for us today the question of boundaries and borders. It raises the question of what does an ethical society do when people who are in need of a home, when people who are wandering, when people who are fleeing from danger, who are trying to save their lives and the lives of their children, are irrationally and cruelly prevented from continuing and finishing their journey. The Torah teaches us that ultimately Balak, Bilam, Midian, and Moab, who are not bad people in general, are wrong in this instance, and both of those nations are punished as a result of it. Jewish tradition tells us that we are to welcome the stranger, whether it be a stranger in our neighborhood or strangers from another land. It tells us that we have a human responsibility to protect and care for those who are in need of shelter. It's a very important question, a question that is dividing our society today. Hopefully, by the time you see this message, The issue of children being separated from their parents at the border will have been well resolved in an appropriate manner. But for now, we can only pray that the government of our country and the government of all countries learns the lesson of this Torah portion, welcomes the stranger in small or large numbers, and obeys God's commandments to us. Shabbat Shalom.